Hello, everyone. Tony here. We finally made it. Um, if you could please let me know that you can see my screen, hear my voice, see my image, I would really appreciate it. And thank you very much for being flexible. Um, the short story is that I couldn't get my mouse to work, it broke. And it wouldn't charge up. It died yesterday, which fortunately it waited until after I finished. I had a series of webinars to teach yesterday evening and for another project, and it worked fine. Today I got home from the mountains and went to start working on the slides, and nothing. So after trying a bunch of stuff, ultimately we ended up buying another one, and it worked just fine. So here we are. So I appreciate to everyone being flexible and moving to 6 o'clock instead of 2. Now, I will tell you before we get into tonight's training that, like last week, almost guaranteed to go 2 hours. Maybe not. We'll see. But it's going to be a little bit of a fire hose. Just again, so you know, we're going to get into some pretty heady stuff. But it's what I feel are some of the really important strategies that most people just don't talk about much with regard to character consistency and stylizing scenes and all of those kinds of things. So we're going to be digging into a lot of that kind of stuff for specifically in this module, creating illustrated kids books. And so with that said, I am going to go full screen, I think. Here we are. Okay. All the recordings are running, so I'm going to pause for a moment and then do a formal introduction, and then we will get into the training. Hello, everyone. Welcome to AI Storyteller Strategies. This is your host and teacher, Tony Laddick. And welcome to Module 2, where we are going to talk about telling AI children's tales. And it's going to be another fun one. As I mentioned before we officially started recording, I suspect we're going to be 90 minutes to 2 hours, just with some of the stuff that I have to share with you. We're going to kind of take things to the next level when it comes to using AI, both to write stories and to create the illustrations. So I'm going to share with you the latest stuff that I've been testing and experimenting with, and all of that. I've been doing some very interesting things from a prompt development and prompt training perspective for the various programs. So that's what we're going to dig into. Essentially build off of last week's module. Okay. All right. So when it comes to planning your storybook, it's important to begin with a strong foundation that includes your character development. And with character development, it's important to create engaging and relatable characters, including their backstory, personality traits, and motivations. And I don't know if you've ever created characters like that before, or if you've ever had any thoughts of what might be a fun character. I have a fair amount of experience with it, not because I'm clever, but just because these ideas just flash into my brain. Of course, we can use ChatGPT or other chatbots to develop characters, but there's something fun about coming up with your own. And I'll give you an example. So this morning, most of you know that pretty much every morning I go up to the mountains. Usually I'll leave the house around 5:30, between 5:30 and 6. And where I go to the mountains is about a half an hour drive from where we currently live. And I go up there to meditate and for inspiration and writing and all of that kind of stuff. I do a lot of writing up there just on my phone. I think I'm at about 450,000 words, something like that, that I've written since I started going up there, which is about 3 years. But anyway, on my way there this morning, I just had this idea pop into my head for characters. And in this particular case, it was a very interesting study because it started off with rhyming, which is not always the case for me, but in this case it was. And so I got an idea for 3 different characters. And it started off with a single word, which was bramble. Of course, with bramble, they are basically thorny bushes and plants like raspberries and blackberries are bramble bushes. And so from there, my brain just kind of took off. And so ultimately, I got an idea for 3 different characters to develop a series of stories around called Bramble, Ramble, and Boo. And so Bramble, I haven't worked out like their appearance or anything like that yet. I'm not that far along. But Bramble is basically this character who's kind of prickly, kind of rude, kind of mean, and all of that. But he's an expert at growing, you guessed it, berries. So their definitions of these characters, the development of them plays directly off of the name. So Ramble is a young female character. I don't know if they're going to be humans. Probably not, knowing me, because I like fantasy characters. But a female character who, as you would imagine, talks a lot. But everybody loves her because she's happy and always excited and always talking, never shuts up, ever. She rambles, hence the name. And then Boo is probably my favorite character. And this one wasn't easy to come by because my brain was just running through with the rhymes. And I knew that it couldn't be like Bramble, Ramble, and something else, amble, like Scramble or Gamble or whatever. It just didn't make sense. So there had to be some kind of an accent. And I'm totally playing off of historic structures in character development. We think of some of the classic, like a bedtime story, Wink and Blinkin' and Nod, right? Classic story for bedtime children's story. And so I was definitely playing off of that. And so ultimately I came up with Boo, and I liked that. But I couldn't quite get a grasp on how the character should be until it hit me all of a sudden. And so Boo, in how I'm developing these characters, is an owl. And he's an outcast owl because he has a speech impediment. Instead of saying who, like everyone else in his family, he can't say who. He only says boo. And everyone thinks that he's trying to scare everybody and all of that kind of stuff. So he's misunderstood because that isn't the case. And so anyway, long story short, the 3 of them connect somehow. And that's about where I am with it all. But it just kind of goes to show you that you have to start somewhere. And I think as a writer and developing stories and all that, even if you're using one of the chatbots, and we're going to get into prompts and how to do that and everything, there still, I think, needs to be a part of ourselves in these characters, at least to some extent, maybe just a little bit, like that they are a reflection of who we are, and so from that perspective, then it can become easy to develop a backstory, which I have a little bit of that done. And it's funny because I wasn't even thinking about that's what we would be talking about tonight. It just kind of came to me. And as time would have it, it's perfect timing. But also personality traits, motivations. And some of this, of course, is going to depend on the age range that you want to develop a story for. Okay. That always plays a role. And then the other flip side of it in planning your storybook is designing your setting. So you want to craft a unique and immersive world that supports your story. You don't have to go grandiose with it, or you can. But one of the benefits of thinking through the setting initially, like the world itself, not what it looks like or anything like that, although that may come, is that is your parameters to play. So is your story happening in a forest or by a lake or in a city or out in the middle of nowhere or in an underground cave or in a car or whatever? So you want to think about what that setting is and what it would look like. And then, of course, the next element of it all is deciding on a plot. And so compelling and coherent stories include developing a strong conflict and resolution. So I think I haven't really given it a lot of thought at this stage, but I think with um, the characters and all that I just shared, that the conflict is going to be about being misunderstood. I think that's kind of where it's going to go. And so there's going to be some sort of a resolution, which I haven't quite decided on. It could be a save the day kind of thing. I'm not sure yet. But anyway, it's something that you're going to want to think about. And then, of course, there's also other important elements to include, like a strong theme, which again usually plays off of whatever the plot is. And then you have the tone, which will determine the types of words that you choose in your story, even if you're generating it using AI, of course. The tone, it could be more spiritual, it could be happy, it could be depressing. It could change depending on the character. There's some really cool things you can do with character attitudes and colors, a lot of stuff like that. And then, of course, there's also pacing and age appropriate content. And so pacing is basically going to be like how much time has lapsed from first word to last word in your story. And within that lapse of time, is there enough time to realistically accomplish what you hope to accomplish? And so, in keeping that in mind, you can use little variables like the next day, so on and so forth. And so, you want to think about that because some stories could actually happen in a matter of moments. If you think about it, others may take place over time. So, that definitely is part of it. And a lot of this just seems to work out really well with ChatGPT if you use that as story development. I'm going to show you how to do that here in a little bit. And so AI can generate these elements for you, or you can write them yourself, or what I would prefer to do is a combination of both. Now, whenever you're working with the chatbots and specifically ChatGPT, there's a number of different ways that you can approach it. The way that you probably wouldn't want to approach it is a prompt like, write me a children's story about, you know, 3 characters and this is their names and, so on and so forth. I mean, you can do that. You will get often a decent story, but you're not going to get the best story. And I think I've mentioned this before with this group, maybe last week or maybe in another course. I'm teaching so much, everything kind of blurs together anymore. But there is, when it comes to prompting, especially with ChatGPT or Jasper Chat or one of the other chats, there's basically 2 types of prompts that you're going to deal with. One type of prompt I call, I don't know if this is an official name, but it's what I call them, are one type of prompt is training prompts. The other type of prompt are command prompts. Training prompts are where you train the AI to act a certain way, to be a certain persona. Command prompts are when you're telling chat what you want it to do. Okay. Now, you can use those two together. In other words, train a persona first, then use commands. And you will definitely get a different result compared to if you just use a command prompt. I've tested this many, many, many times, hundreds of times, just to make sure with all kinds of writing from marketing and sales copy to stories and article writing and all kinds of things. And the result is always the same. If you start with just a simple command prompt, you will get a good result. You start off with a training prompt and then use a command prompt. If the training prompt is written right, your results are going to be factors better, 5-10 factors better. I've just seen it over and over again. So with that said, I'm going to show you how to do the latter. Actually, I'll give you probably examples of both. So when it comes to using chat specifically, you don't need to have, there's like a free version and a plus version. Plus version is $20 a month. You don't have to use that. Okay. The big benefit of having a plus account is that you have priority access to use the software. So if it gets busy, like go on a Friday night or something, instead of getting locked out with a free account, which may happen, in most cases you have access regardless. To me, that's worth paying the $20 a month, but that's up to you. So you can prompt ChatGPT or other chat like Jasper or UChat or any of those to help develop your character name and appearance. So it can help you develop detailed descriptions of your character's physical appearance, personality, and backstory. And honestly, it'd be a good exercise to go through this because it's so good in many cases that it actually can help you think differently about how to develop your story and how to develop your characters and that kind of stuff. You also have the story, plot, and arc. So it can help you craft a coherent plot and character arc to guide your narrative. And then usually there is some kind of a lesson, a cause and effect. And so you can explore the message or lesson that you want to convey. Like one prompt that I've used in the past is, how, this, whatever this is, happens to the character and what life lesson did they learn as a process of going through that experience, something like that. You can also use it to develop the settings for the story to take place and create rich and immersive settings for your story. And then, of course, depending on what age range that you're writing for, you may have support characters, which could be people or animals or even inanimate objects. I mean, you're writing the story. You can bring to life whatever you choose. And so it can help you develop those supporting characters that complement and enhance your story's main characters. So let me give you a couple of examples. You can actually train ChatGPT to be a storyteller and artist. And this is what I would encourage you to lead with. So here's an example that I wrote a little while back. You are an award-winning expert storyteller and illustrator specializing in leveraging AI tools like ChatGPT and Midjourney to create best-selling children's books and comics, as well as well-loved audio and video books. Can you tell I wrote this for this course? You're well-versed in many storytelling methods, including fairy tales, mythology, and other storytelling methods from many parts of the world. Please respond with agreed if you understand. So it's usually good to include some kind of a phrase like that, just so that it establishes the training model. Okay, so just to kind of break it down here a little bit, I usually start off with what kind of persona would I want to have write my stories, on my behalf, we'll say. And so why not go for an award-winning expert storyteller and illustrator, and somebody who has experience using AI tools? Like Chat understands all of that. And then the next part is we define what we expect from our expert to create best-selling children's books and comics, as well as well-loved audios and video books. And then we further describe the knowledge that the expert has, whatever the expert is. In this case, of course, storyteller. You are well-versed in many storytelling methods, including fairy tales, mythology, and other storytelling methods from many parts of the world. I would probably, one thing that I would normally add, I think, to a prompt like this, and I didn't, was that they also understood symbolism and its meanings, and maybe even archetypes. As much information you can share without really going overboard, especially if it can have a positive impact on whatever it is that the chat writes, then include that, and you may want to take a completely different approach. That's up to you. And so then the last sentence, of course, please respond with agreed. That's just, to make sure that the chat understands. So then another prompt that you can add after the first one, and we're going to walk through this. Please write me a new children's story and include breakdowns for the following: character, name, and appearance. So I'm basically telling it what everything that was on the previous slide I have listed here. And you might think, will this work? And the answer is, I will show you. We will find out together. So I'm going to copy our first prompt here and come over to chat. And I'm going to paste in our prompt. It's exactly right from the slide. Okay, so it said agreed. So now I'm going to take this whole section here. I didn't give it any definition as far as the types of characters that I wanted or the type of children's story that I wanted. You can define that if you choose. So we're taking a very generic approach on purpose, because I want you to see what can be possible. So I'm just going to paste this in here. And you don't have to, but I'm just going to separate each of these sections. Okay. And then hit enter. The Enchanted Paintbrush. Lila Moonbeam. So notice how it's giving a very detailed description of what Lila looks like. That's awesome. Support characters. Lila discovers a magical paintbrush in her grandmother's attic, which has the power to bring paintings to life. With this newfound power, Lila inadvertently releases a mischievous creature named Brushy from one of her paintings. That's hilarious. So the lesson is to convey the importance of collaboration, understanding, and the power of creativity. It teaches children that sometimes people may act out because they feel misunderstood or unappreciated. The setting takes place in Lila's village. It describes the village, an enchanted forest. And then it goes into more support characters. So it really broke down everything we asked it to. So now that we have that, everything we need, which I would definitely take this entire thing, is a great starting point. Actually, it looks like it could be something fun. So I would just take this and copy it, paste it into a Google Doc or Evernote or whatever. I use Evernote, but you can use, whatever you prefer for notes. Now, the next step that we can take, my throat is so dry tonight, I don't know why. It's really warm here today, and the humidity seems low. All right, so now that we have this established, and remember, whenever you're working with chat, it remembers. Okay, it remembers everything. And so whenever you're working on a story, like in this case, this one, always keep asking questions within this same story. Just keep feeding it, because it will remember everything else that it's written up here. So you don't have to keep reminding it. All right, so now we can say, using the above story, the enchanted English, using the above story details. Is that what we want to say? Yeah, we'll go with that. Please write the final story. So now it's going to draw from everything that it just wrote. So we'll just let it. Now, because we prepared it ahead of time, we basically forced chat to think about all the stuff that I talked about that's important in our storytelling development, right? We need a story plot and arc, a lesson, characters, support characters, setting, all of that stuff. We asked it to create, and it did so. And so now it's just drawing on that to write us a story. Now, one thing that I've found with chat is that usually whenever it writes stories, it almost always starts with once upon a time. And that's fine. I mean, very fairy tale, and I love fairy tales, but probably in most cases, I would recommend not starting that way. And we could ask it to rewrite the first paragraph without using the phrase once upon a time if we wanted to. One thing that I would probably recommend doing is this, just at quick glance, it really appears like a good story. And so what I usually do is take the story generated, copy it and paste it, and then hit regenerate response. Usually you'll get a related story, sometimes a completely different one. Sometimes the second one may be better. And so it really just depends on what you want. Now, let's say that you don't like the name that it came up with, Lila Moonbeam. I think it's a cool name, but you don't have to use it, or Mr. Flutters, or whatever. You can always change the names. You can literally change anything you want after the fact. I mean, that stands to reason, right? And so just for grins and giggles, I'm not going to copy this, but I am going to regenerate it. just to see what it comes up with. Some of it's going to be the same. So it's already described the paintbrush differently and the discovery of it, which I like this version better. While rummaging through an old chest, she discovers a beautiful antique paintbrush. Its handle was intricately carved with moon and star patterns that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. I love that. I mean, that just works well for how I'm wired. So in the first story, they had Lila painting the enchanted forest. In this story, it's a place that she visits, which I like that idea better. So I definitely like this one better. And so let's say, I'm not quite sure what the age range would be on this story. Probably, I don't know, first, second, third grade, something like that. Susan says in one of your first AI trainings, you recommended running all generated content through an AI detector. Do you recommend that for this as well? Not really. I don't think it's necessary in this case, unless you are planning to just publish it on like a website, then maybe. But because of SEO and all of that kind of stuff, but Google really has changed their tune a lot on that, especially since they released their own AI chatbot, Bard, which I've been using for a couple of weeks, and it's not anywhere near as good as ChatGPT. But um, they've really loosened up those rules quite a bit. But if you're publishing, even like on Kindle or in print, either one, it doesn't matter. They're not going to scan it to see if it's AI or not. And so, yeah, it's a good question though. Thank you. So now we have our story. Was the response better or worse? I'd say it was better. So we have our story. And so now what? Well, let's go back to our slides. So let's talk about the illustration part next. Every time I have you guys in a second window, and it was blocking me being able to see you full screen. Okay, so we have our story. That's a good starting point. And so the next part is the illustrations. The illustrations are what really bring the story to life, but there are other factors to consider, not to consider as a part of the illustration process. I'm a big fan of storyboarding. It doesn't have to be pretty or sexy, but it just helps you visually think through things. And the reason why some of this is important from a learning perspective, it's been proven that as far as how people learn, they learn 80% more efficiently using images versus words. Okay. And so with storyboarding, you can create a visual outline of your story that can help ensure coherence, continuity, and pacing. Again, it doesn't have to be anything sexy. It can be line drawings or something simple like that. Just whatever makes sense based on the story that you've written or that you've had generated. because part of the pacing is, like, let's say you're writing a children's book and your target page count is 36 pages, which is ultimately means 32 pages whenever you add in front matter and stuff. How many words or paragraphs or sentences, however you choose to look at it, should be on each page. And with younger children's books, definitely less words. So that's where the pacing comes in, and storyboarding basically gives you the ability to break down. Usually what I do is break down the story by paragraphs. And so like, well, actually it is broken down. So with this paragraph right here, we have how many paragraphs? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So if we took each paragraph, and let's say that we wanted to handle the book so that we have like a full page illustration on the left and then the story element on the right. Like we want to use that kind of a layout model or template, right? So then because we have 10 paragraphs, that puts us at 20 pages. If you think of it from a template perspective, if we took each of these paragraphs and broke it up into two sentences each, that puts us at 40 pages. Okay, so you can kind of think about it like that. You also want to examine whether in each paragraph or with each sentence, what parts of that is presenting a visual element of the story. So like if we take a look here at the story, once upon a time in a quaint picturesque village nestled in a valley surrounded by rolling hills and forests, there lived a young girl named Lila Moonbeam. So we could just, if we wanted to, visually picture the village, or since Lila is the star of the story, we get her description here in the next sentence. With her long, curly auburn hair and eyes and bright, curious green eyes, Lila was known for her adventurous spirit and love of all things creative. So that would be a good lead-in image. She lived with her wise and loving grandmother, Grandma Willow, a well-respected herbalist in the village. I think chat is picking up on the things that I like, because I didn't prime it to write stuff like this, but it just fits perfect. So we have two potential images right there. One rainy afternoon, Lila decided to explore the attic, a treasure trove of family memories, blah, blah, blah. And that could be an image standalone there. While rummaging through an old chest, she discovered a beautiful antique paintbrush. This absolutely could. And especially this part right here. The handle was intricately carved with moon and star patterns. So it looks like, in reading down through this, it's descriptive enough that we could really garner two illustrations per paragraph. And we could, change that some if we really want to stick to a certain page count, of course. But there's enough descriptors in these phrases that we could absolutely, it appears, come up with 2 illustrations per paragraph. So that works out pretty well. So let's go back to our slides. Next up, you'll want to decide an artist style, illustration type, and etc. Choose the best illustration style, technique, and format that suits your story's tone, target audience, and genre. That's where some of the PDFs that I've created, like the style guide, artist style guides, especially the one from Midjourney, that's where they can come in handy, because it has all of the various artist names, 2,000 of them, and you can see their styles and use that as a starting place. Another thing that you can do is go to some of the prompt communities like Midjourney's, where you can see what other people are doing and identify a style that way. Another thing that you can do that I've been experimenting a lot with, uh, let's see, let's just go to Midjourney real quick. So if you go to the community feed for Midjourney, you can see what other people are generating. And then if there's something that kind of sticks out to you as a style that you like, you can see what the prompt is. No text prompt. And that's what it created. That's funny. So maybe you like this style right here. So if we click on that, we can see basically when it comes to descriptor prompts for Midjourney, we'll just use Midjourney as the example. A couple things that you're looking for is what the subject matter is in the prompt, and then what the artistic style is in the prompt. And then also normally there's some kind of a setting. So you have subject, setting, and style. Usually those three. And then there can be some secondary setting type stuff. And then there's parameters that play into it. So with that description in mind, we have created digital painting of a baby animal with wings that resembles stained glass windows. Okay, so the subject is baby animal with wings, or baby animal with wings that represent stained glass windows. That is the subject. But created digital painting, we could take this of a baby animal with wings that resemble stained glass and make that anything. And then with vibrant colors and intricate psychedelic patterns, that can be part of the artistic style. Her crown should be made of gold. So this is going back to subject description. The background, so here's our setting. The background should be a dreamy landscape with waterfalls and mountains in the distance. Animals should be present. That's also part of the setting. So they didn't really get into anything with an artist. But if you're on Tuesday's training where I talked about developing prompts for prompt base, what I just described there will probably seem somewhat familiar to you. Which also brings me to another point. If in your digging around you can't find a style that you like, go to Prompt Base and buy one. You can buy a prompt there for a couple bucks. And I've certainly done that. So we're looking for styles. Like this is a super cool style. Very simple prompt. Hedgehog in a field, watercolor, highly detailed. Subject in a field is our setting. Watercolor, highly detailed is our style. So subject, setting, style in a very simple prompt. So you get the idea. Whatever you prefer, whatever you like. It's so subjective, which is awesome, I think. And Midjourney works best with sentences these days. You can still break it up and use commas and all of that, but you want to start with your story sentences. In other words, the story that's generated, you want to go down through and test those sentences as prompts first, and then adjust accordingly. I've had pretty good success with those. And then you may have to tweak it. I'm going to show you some, as we get into this a little bit, I'm going to show you how to basically force Midjourney to maintain your style throughout all your illustrations, because that's an important part of illustrating a book or a comic or whatever. We're going to be talking about comics in the next module. But that's an important part of the process, is that every image has to be the same style. Not to mention the fact that you probably want to have your character, your hero, kind of look the same. image to image, different poses, all of that kind of stuff. And there's some tricks to it. I'm going to show you some advanced prompting here in a little bit, but there's definitely some fun tricks to it all. And so you also want to make sure that you choose the best aspect ratio for the illustrations. And so the correct aspect ratio for your illustrations come from the page size for your book. So let's say that you want to do a print book, and you're going to go with the page trim size of 8 by 10. So for 8 by 10, the aspect ratio would be 4:5. Okay, you just kind of break it down. You can put in 8 by 10 or 8 to 10 if you want, but 4:5 is the exact same thing. So so that's all that it is. You want to make sure that the final image output matches the aspect ratio of whatever page. If you want to go 6 by 9, that would basically be 2:3 aspect ratio. Okay, divide both by 3. I'm sure you can do the math. So so what do we have next? All right, now when it comes to thinking through the illustrations for your book, there's some things that can really help keep the storytelling, the visual storytelling, energized. One of the ways to do that is through scene changes, and so it's always the same style. Of course, we just talked about that. Throughout all the different scenes, so you can create a consistent style for your illustrations while incorporating different settings to suit your story's narrative and mood. And so this consistency comes from prompt style descriptors that you can choose, and we just talked about that. An example would be the setting, whatever that is. Well, here in this case, it is a mystical forest in the style of, so that's the whole style. I kind of messed this up a little bit. So a mystical forest is actually the setting. The subject, which I didn't include, I don't know why, brain tired. So you have your subject, and the subject could be anything. Your setting, the mystical forest, and then your style in the art style of Tony DiTorlizzi, Mark Simonetti, and Brian Froud. So that is your style there. I guess you could say that the mystical forest is that, but it really is more the setting. So I'm going to show you some visuals. So this is a forest wizard in a mystical forest in the art style of a secret cave door in a mystical forest in the art style of a forest path through a mystical forest in the art style of a mushroom city in a mystical forest in the art style of. I think you're getting the idea. A young blonde-haired girl in a mystical forest in the art style of. So as you look through these illustrations, the prompt is essentially the same. The only thing that's changing is the subject matter. Okay. It's just the subject. I've changed the subject from a forest wizard to a secret cave to a path to a mushroom city to a lost blonde-haired girl. Okay. And that's all that changed. And so one of the great benefits of taking that approach then is that it just makes it a lot easier to actually generate consistent illustrations. And that's what we're after. And so let's talk about character posing. I'm going to go through a bunch of the slides, and then we're going to do the demo part. I know we're kind of flying through a lot of this right now, but things are about to slow down really quickly. That's weird. It says I've been doing the presentation for 16 minutes, but we're 50 minutes in, so not quite sure what's going on with my screen. It keeps flashing. I don't know if you guys see that or not, but a couple of times it has flashed. I don't know why. Anyway, so character posing. There are some fun tricks that I'm going to show you to repose characters and change emotional expressions. Basically, in order to do that, you use prompts and reference material to create different poses and emotional expressions for your characters. There are some very detailed tricks that we are going to discover here in a few minutes that help convey the character personality and their mood. And here are some of the methods that we're going to look at. Yeah, I'm recording 3 different ways, Lori, so the recording should be fine. One way or another. We can develop character posing sheets. We can also create sets of guide images with varied backgrounds. Multi-prompting. I don't know how many of you have experimented with that in Midjourney. I'm going to show you how to do it here in a little bit. But multi-prompting can help control our outputs. It basically instructs through the prompt what sections of the prompt carry the most weight, like text weighting, but also how the AI should process the prompt. It can process it all at once, or it can process it in pieces in an additive form. Yeah, permutations is the last one, Susan. We're going to get into that as well. Also, another way that you can control output is through using the same seed number. Okay, so just to kind of give you a little idea of how that can work. And then I'm going to show you how it works. Here is a prompt that I was testing earlier today, and it has all the things. And I color coded them. So the orange here are control images. There's 4 of them in this particular case. 3 of them control the appearance of the character. The 4th image is controlling the setting. And then there's the prompt itself. This is the subject, a young girl with blonde hair wearing a white boho top and baggy brown pants. Next is the actions that she's taking, which is part of the setting. Well, actually, it isn't. Yeah, I guess it is part of the setting, really. And I have it set up as permutations. So character description, purple. The scene settings, which, again, is set up as permutations, which in Midjourney, that's what these little brackets are. So looking in a window of an elf house, sitting on a tree stump, talking to a tree ant. So the way permutations works is that it will create prompts using each one of these individually. So 3 prompts. Next, we have artist style. That's right here in the art style of Tony DiTerlizzi, so on and so forth. And then full background scene with moody cinematic lighting. That is also part of the style. Then we have multi-prompting, multi-prompt text weighting. That's what the little colons are. You see the 2 colons and then a number, 2 to 1.5. So these always have to equal positive. It's basically telling the software the scene setting is important, the artist style is important, and the background scene is also important, but not quite as important. I don't have a text weighting setting for the character because she's being controlled by these by these images. A treant is basically, think Groot. I am Groot. Groot is a treant. Treebeard, whatever you want to call them. Treant is actually a word from Dungeons and Dragons. And then the seed number. I was using the exact same seed number so that it helped to control the output. And then the aspect ratio, in this particular case, I was going with a landscape mode aspect ratio. So how does this all break down? Because it looks confusing as hell if you've never used any of these before. Hope that bar of water's gone. All right. So let's switch back over to Midjourney. And I ran all of this ahead of time. So because there's a lot of testing that I wanted to do. And I made some interesting discoveries along the way, which we will all benefit from. Okay. So first things first, you saw the individual images on the previous slide. That was me kind of starting through a style. I wanted to establish a style. And so that's where forest wizard walking through a mystical forest in the art style of, okay? And I really liked how these images were turning out. And I did the secret cave entrance. I experimented with mountain lake and secret cave again. So you can see some of the different images. And the only thing that I changed was the subject matter. Like I mentioned, a magical path through, a mushroom kingdom in, a lost girl with blonde hair in. Okay. And I really liked how she looked. And kind of how she was dressed here is what inspired me to experiment with her description later on. So then the next thing that I went into was to start working on how I wanted my character to look. And I'm going to zoom in here so you can perhaps see this a little bit better. So I started off with a lost girl with blonde hair wearing a white boho top and baggy brown pants. Multiple poses and expressions is a key phrase here. And then I just changed it to young girl. I experimented with the wizard a little bit. And then I just ran several iterations of this same kind of thing. And then I moved things around a little bit. Actually, what I did was I added character design sheet to the front end. Character design sheet, full body of a young girl with blonde hair wearing a white boho top and baggy brown pants, multiple poses and expressions, and then our style, and then white background. And so ultimately, I saw this image. It had her facing forward, facing at an angle, and facing backward. And all of the styles are very similar, very related. You can see she's wearing a necklace here and here. You can't see the necklace from behind. There were some other ones that I thought looked good, like the one to the right here was pretty good. So then the next step, and I tried a couple more. I almost went with this one, but I thought it was a little too stylized. Experimented with the wizard a little bit more. So I upscaled this one and then saved it. The next step that I did here, you can see I ran a couple more. The next step that I did was I took this image into Photoshop and cut each girl out so that she was independent. I only did this character, this one, and I made them all the same size. And so you can see the final result is like that. Okay, just I I just cut them according to how they were on the page. And so then I uploaded all three of them. That's why they're there. And then copied all three of the URLs and pasted them one right after the other with space in between. And then I went back to the description: a young girl with blonde hair wearing a white boho top, baggy brown pants, arms raised, and then the same style. And we got arms raised in different forms. That's cool. So then I decided, let's see what would happen if I reintroduced the setting in a mystical forest. And so immediately I noticed that it was putting her in there, but it was cutting everything off, which doesn't really help me much. I had a horizontal aspect ratio and it's forcing verticals in here. And so what I did next was I changed the prompt slightly, or no, I didn't in this one. I just tested it again and didn't get a result I liked. So I kept experimenting with it, just trying to figure out how to fix it. And so I added a prompt then, full background scene. And this was the result. I actually got a better result. So it wasn't clipping it, but I didn't like the white. Okay. So then I added full background scene with dim, moody cinematic lighting. And it still didn't get rid of the white. So then I kept experimenting, kept changing, and I got a decent result. But again, it's completely blown out, and that isn't going to be helpful. So the next thing that I did after testing this a couple of times, I created an environment, and added that environment to the scene. Didn't really help. And then I tried one image of her together with the environment. So you can see this image here together with the setting or environment, this one. And then I started getting somewhere. It kind of looked good, but it was still very bright in the middle. And so then I went back and started adding in prompt weighting. So you can see here where or multi-prompting, whatever you want to call it. I added a weight of 2 in here of her smiling. And I mean, I don't know that she's really smiling that much, but it worked better. So then I kept experimenting, adding more prompts and all of that kind of stuff. Then I had, you can see all the experiments. Then I had an aha moment that maybe instead of having her pasted against a white background, I should paste her, put a gray background. One thing I forgot to mention. One of the things that changed this, I must have deleted it, is that I actually created a 4:3 aspect ratio of the girl, except with a white background. So instead of it being just that slender cropped image, I expanded it out to the correct aspect ratio. So that's when it started changing. And so then I decided to try gray. And gray brought in a lot more detail. So the gray image is just the 3 poses of the girl with the prompt. Okay, so these 3 images here are the front, turned, and back images. And you can see if I just randomly click on one, you can see, and it's not really even a great image of the girl, but the results are much better and they're getting closer. So then I decided to try, I wonder if black would be even better. So I uploaded them, tried black with the prompt, and everything, of course, went dark. Now, granted, I did say dim here. So be careful what you wish for. I removed or no, I didn't remove dim here. I just reran it, and it brightened it up a little bit. I added weighting to cinematic lighting. That didn't really help. I tried a different background scene. That didn't really help a lot with the black. So ultimately, I switched back to the gray. And then I started getting consistent results. And so you can see here, I'm running 3 different images, which are the 3 girl poses. Just to help ensure that I'm getting consistency in the character. And then the last one is this lake scene that we generated earlier. So then the next thing that I did was I kept the 3 girls together with the gray. I went back to the gray still and removed the setting image. And you can see that I started losing a lot of detail again. So I put it back in again, and like magic, I started getting consistent looking images. So then from there, it was just a matter of beginning to play with the props and the views of her standing next to a lake. And then I went looking, misspelled it, but looking out across the lake, and then standing on the edge of a rock cliff, and then looking into the window of an elf house. And you can see that overall, even though the characters are in different poses, they are consistent. Every so often, you'll see a little bit of variation in like the belt or something like that, but overall, they're not bad. And so then I started experimenting with the permutations. And that's where that's why there's so many of some of these images, is because of the permutations. And so yeah, you can see here, like this one here, her hair's kind of wild, but one cool thing that happened with the tree ant, I think, so this image here, number 1, you'll notice that she's facing away from the little tree ant guy here. And now she's facing him. Everything else is the same except for her position. And that's one of the cool things that you can do with these prompts. So just to kind of show you again, I'm going to take, well, let's do it this way. I'm going to take this entire prompt and run it again just so you can see the results that we'll get from it. And I'm using version 5, by the way. Oh, I forgot. It doesn't like to copy and paste out of PowerPoint. I don't know why. So let's try it out of Evernote. Here we are. Okay, so we have our control images. These first 3 are the girl in the different poses. This last one is our setting. And then we have a young girl with blonde hair wearing a white hook. So her description is always the same. And then we have the permutation section, looking into a window of an elf house, sitting on a tree stump, talking to a tree ant. So let's change these up a little bit. Make this one walking through a beautiful garden. Now, what's the advantage of doing this? You can set up one prompt, and then it will generate all the images all at once. You don't even have to put them in one at a time. So maybe we want a scene of her uh, walking through a beautiful garden, and then maybe we want a picture of smelling the flowers. Smelling sunflowers. And then last but not least, um, I don't know, let's put something random in. I don't know if it'll actually produce this, but we'll find out. Drinking from an old well. Why not challenge it? The worst that can happen is nothing. And then we have our prompt weighting, which I'm going to leave there, or multi-prompting, however you want to refer to it. Our style is going to be the same. Full background scene with moody cinematic lighting. That's all going to be the same. The seed number I'm using is the same as the other images that we generated. And I'll explain how to find the seed number in a minute. And then the aspect ratio, which is the same. So whenever you're using permutations, it will ask you if you want to generate, in this case, we're doing 3 options. Do you want to imagine 3 prompts from the template? Yes, we do. So we'll click yes. And it'll load all 3 of them simultaneously. Now, I think there was a question earlier about finding out seed numbers. So I'll show you how to do that. So let's say I really like this scene and I want to use this as a foundation to build from. So that's where finding a seed number and using it can make sense. All that you have to do is react to the scene. If you mouse over to the upper right-hand corner, it says add a reaction. If you click on that and choose the envelope and click on that, notice how it says one new message. If I scroll down to the bottom, it shows those same images again, along with the job ID and the seed number right there. So that's where the seed number came from. And I see there's a couple questions. I'll get to those in a minute. All right, so here is walking through a beautiful garden. I don't know if I really executed that one well. Smelling sunflowers. We do have sunflowers. I probably like that image the best. And then drinking from an old well. Yeah, we didn't really get that one at all. Although it's interesting, this image here does kind of look like she's holding something to drink, and it looks like there could be a well kind of thing in this image. So all in all, pretty cool. But you'll notice that the characters facially aren't 100% identical, but they're close enough for government work and hand grenades. And so, you can also generate multiple versions of each of these, just run it again, run it again. There's safety in numbers because you will get different results every time. I would recommend copy and paste the prompt in and run it that way rather than re-roll. And the reason why is if you hit re-roll, it changes the seed numbers if you're using that as a part of tracking. You don't have to actually, but it does give you another level of control. You also notice that I used the 3 different images of the girl to control her appearance. You can use more than that. You can use 4 or 5 if you want. It just further helps in standardizing her appearance in multiple scenes. Okay. Now, this kind of dark fantasy world kind of thing, that's just what I decided to create, and that's being controlled by this art style. I could completely put in new artists, or throw in something like watercolor painting in the art style of, or whatever. You don't have to use artists. You can just put together whatever style you want to describe, and it would completely change everything of how it's appearance. So that's why it's important to do a little research to kind of get clear on the types of styles, that you may be interested in, and then design from there. So I'm going to take another quick drink here. All right. Let me go back through some of the comments here. Shartalk says, will we be going deeper into creating writing prompts for different types of books? I'm probably not. Well, next module, we're going to talk about writing prompts for comic books and graphic novels. But we could be here all day talking about all the different types of books that you can write. With what I shared with regard to the children's story, you could use that as a foundation. The one change that I would make, and I will show you this, I think you'll find it helpful. Let's go back here to Midjourney, or to chat. So we have our chatbot trained. Okay. So I'm just going to leave it as it is. So one of the challenges that you can run into with using ChatGPT to write a longer story is continuity between chapters. That is one of the hangups that you can encounter. And the best way to kind of circumvent that is using a very structured approach. And so from that perspective, what I would recommend doing if you want to write something longer, like a chapter book or something like that, you could say something like, once we have our chatbot trained, we could say something like, let's see, please write a 10 chapter outline for a story that was, or let's change that a little bit. Using a story arc that flows over all 10 chapters with the conclusion revealed in the final chapter. Also, use the first chapter to establish the main characters and reveal the beginning of the story. So you would have to think through this a little bit. I'm just doing this off the top of my head. Okay. And so I can hit enter, and it's going to draw off of the story that's already been written because it has been. So you would want to perhaps start all over again. But it's going to outline the story. And by outlining it into a set number of chapters, in this case, 10, it gives us the opportunity to build a much longer story. But a couple things to keep in mind, because chat has a continuity issue, writing chapter to chapter. So you can't just say, write chapter 1 for this story and then write chapter 2. It won't work. You'll have a lot of problems. And so now we have a 10 chapter outline, very basic outline. And so with that established, we can then come back here to chat again and say, using the above outline, please write chapter 1. I guess it used the numbers. Including relevant details, write a minimum of 1,000 words. Now it's starting off describing her basically the same way, but what we're interested in seeing here is comparing the outputs that we're going to get this way compared to what was originally written as the original story, which was much shorter. So you notice that one of the ways it's filling out is by going into a lot more description of the setting. It's describing the village, it's describing Lila's home, and then it goes into a lot more of the detail of her going into the attic. Remember, I told it to begin establishing the story arc in chapter 1. Sometimes it'll stop or pause like this. You can just type in continue, and it normally will pick up where it leaves off. So you notice that it's definitely writing a lot longer. Yes, absolutely, Shar. Now it looks like, yeah, it actually wrote a complete story for chapter one. Um, so we're going to try something here. Please continue the story arc with chapter 2. Story spelled correctly. Using the chapter 2 outline above. Please write okay, here it says they decided to embark on a journey with Mrs. Flutters. So as they set off on their adventure, they had no idea the incredible journey that awaited them. And so, chapter 2, as the sun began to rise, they set off on their journey to the enchanted forest. So, actually, it is doing what I hoped it would. It appears that it's sticking with the larger story arc. And so, let's see. So, chapter 3 is Chaos in the Village. So what I'm going to do, just to see how it responds, I'm going to copy this command. I think I got hung up. Oh, there it is. Now, it'll be interesting because we saw that chapter 3 is about something going on in the village, which is not where they are currently. They're in the middle of the forest. So it'll be interesting to see if it does a scene change. You may have to hit continue a couple times. Now, one thing I will say also is that it's not going to be perfect. You're going to need to massage it. You're going to need to edit it, all of the things. So they went back to the village. So that's good. Okay. So now so it is picking up where this one left off. That's good. Okay. So it seems like this is going to work for what you were um, asking about. Stevie asked, do you know if Midjourney is coming out with a web version interface like Leonardo? Supposedly they're working on it, but I have no idea when. They keep saying that they are. Yeah, it's like the Energizer Bunny here. It keeps going and going. So that's a good thing. But a couple keys that I'll point out here, if you didn't write down the prompts that I came up with for this. So I started off, write a 10 chapter, it could be whatever, however many chapters you want, outline using a story arc that flows over all 10 chapters. This is very important. Otherwise, it will complete the story in the first chapter. With a conclusion revealed in the final chapter, also use the first chapter to establish the main character and reveal the beginning of the story arc. So you can add in more detail if you want. And then what I did then was using the above outline, please write chapter 1, including relevant details, write a minimum of 1,000 words. And then for chapter 2, please continue the story arc using the chapter 2 outline above. Please write at least 1,000 words. And then I did the same thing for chapter 3. Okay, so I have a couple more things to show you here real quick. If that's okay. Let me get back to my slideshow here. All right. Y'all keep disappearing on me. All right, so we covered this. All right. Now, part of the process, the next steps, once you begin outputting your images, you want to refine your final outputs for maximum impact. So that includes editing your results using inpainting and outpainting where needed. Basically, what that means is that maybe you have some images that just aren't quite perfect, or that you maybe want to expand or remove an element from, or something like that. Leonardo is the best option for doing that, and I'll show you how to do that real quick. Let's find an image that we just created. So let's pick number. Do I want to do that one? This will be a really good one. So where was that original? Okay, save image as. So what I'm going to do is switch over to Leonardo here, and I want AI canvas. Of course, I was logged in. It logged me out. If at first you don't succeed. Okay, so next I'm going to click on upload image from a computer and pick our girl here and choose open. And so one of the things that I may want to do, you'll notice that there's a little black bar that goes across the bottom here. And it's uneven for whatever random reason. So I can take this this frame right here. And you notice right now it's 512 by 512. I can expand the width of it so that it's closer to our output. And actually, I'm going to extend it a little bit beyond. Just kind of center the object here. And so the next thing I'm going to do is choose the erase tool. And I'm just going to erase that bottom black band that's there. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then I'm going to choose the select tool again and just kind of move this down a bit. Now, one thing that I need is the descriptor. And let's see here. Which image am I using? That one. Okay. There we are. So I'm going to copy this whole thing, except that Leonardo isn't going to recognize the image weighting. So we will have to change that a little bit. So down here where it says prompt, I'm going to paste that in and then just remove the image weighting stuff. Okay. So now the next step we're going to do, I usually use Stable Diffusion 1.5. And I'm going to choose, I guess it'll only let me do 2 because of the size of this. So I'm going to hit generate. Content moderation filter. What is it moderating? Maybe young. Sometimes these moderation filters go way overboard. So I'm just going to remove this whole section with the girl and see if that's enough. Yeah. So it's flagging the word girl. Like, how are we supposed to create females? Yeah, so that isn't going to be helpful. So I'm going to remove that also. Let's see if so what I've found is that in some cases, this can definitely be hit or miss. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I used an example earlier to test it, and it worked perfectly. So you don't know until you know. So maybe I was trying to bite off more than I can choose, because now the output is fine. And I have it generating 2 choices. The first one is best. So then I can just hit accept and it will take that. So let's say that I also want to expand. It's kind of expand this scene here. I kind of like that one, I think. So that'll work. And then I can come over here and do the same thing. I think that first one is definitely our winner. And so then the other thing that we can do, that's out painting, what we were just looking at there. The other thing that we can do is in painting. And the way that works is, let's say that we don't like these little tendril things coming down. I don't even know why they're there. So we can choose the eraser tool and just erase that. And erase this one. You want to make sure that the frame is over where you're erasing. Maybe get rid of that little flyaway hair deal there. And I don't know what that is, so we'll just, okay. And then hit generate. And the only thing it'll replace is what is erased, which includes a little section here at the top and the bottom. So you notice that those fly away things are gone. I think number one is the best result. And so I'm going to move it again over here just a little bit. And I noticed that there's these little dots here. I don't know what they are. So we're going to get rid of them. And maybe this little, whatever it is, hanging down here, we'll just get rid of that. And maybe this also. We'll just smooth out this whole branch thing going on here. I think I probably like number one the best. So I'll click accept. And so that's basically the way this works. You know, like another thing we could do theoretically. Whoops. I want the frame. This boat looking thing, no idea what it is. So we're just gonna wash that boat right out of my hair. And maybe get rid of the reflective kind of thing too. Right on. I don't know. I think I like that one. Except, so the boat is gone. Susan asks, can we fill her torn sleeve? You mean right here? I think that's actually a fashion design style, but we could. What's cool is that even though this is a stable diffusion based in painting, it's doing a pretty decent job at matching what Midjourney produced. I kind of like 3 there. So there you go. I mean, it's really pretty amazing. Yeah, you have to use a prompt for the in painting or the out painting. And in this case, it looks like the best result was just the artist style. That seems to be working fine, which is cool. I think one last thing that I'm going to get rid of here, and then we'll move on, is whatever this weird ass looking thing is down here in the corner. Looks like a duck head or something. Maybe this too. That one works. Yeah, so then once you have everything filled in the way you want, I mean, I guess technically the top edge here isn't even. I'm not going to worry with it because that can be cropped. Then we just hit download artwork. And that's our final result. And when you compare that to, I thought I had a file folder here. Move this out of the way and move this over. So we started off with this. Make that smaller. We started off with this and ended up with a much larger version of the image. And the boat's gone, and she's standing on rocks now. But everything else is the same, except for what we erased or expanded on. And there's a new feature now called, I don't know if Leonardo has it or not. It may. It's called zoom out or out zooming or something like that, where it's a form of out painting, but it just takes the actual existing image and then adds on all 4 sides. So it looks like it's zooming out, which is super cool. Not in this particular program, Susan, as far as changing the changing her hair color, but there are other programs, and I'm not going to get into it tonight, where you can actually use prompts to edit photos, like make her hair brown or give her sunglasses or something like that, and it will do that. Yeah, I did share that, Pamela. I'll just encourage you to watch the replay for where we found the seed number. Okay, so let's get back to our slides. So final scaling and sizing, you want to ensure that your illustrations are appropriately sized and scaled for your book's layout, whatever that might be. I was using a horizontal aspect ratio in our case study example, but more than likely you're going to create a portrait type book, portrait aspect ratio. And so for upscaling your images, I use Photoshop Super Zoom a lot, and also Topaz Labs. These are the 3 that I used. Super Zoom and Photoshop, Gigapixel AI, and Vance AI. Of the 3, I would say Vance is probably the cheapest. There are some free options out there, and I don't know. I've tried several of them. I have mixed feelings about them. If you have the AI creator toolkit thing, or whatever I called it, um, the PDF that I shared a few weeks ago, it has a list of all the things, including a bunch of upscalers. But these are the ones that I personally use. And so you want to make sure whenever you're scaling your final images, because normally um, Midjourney is outputting at about 1024 pixels. So you're going to likely need to upscale it at least 4x. Okay. And I can take you through that process here in just a moment. So then once you have your images upscaled and at the right size and all of that, you want to design your cover. I would probably just pull an image from what you've already generated, unless you want to create something specific that goes along with your book. You're going to need a title page and a copyright page. Usually that's page 1 and 2 in your interior. There's a lot of great templates for copyright page online. If you just do a quick search, you'll find one. You could probably even have chat write you one, quite honestly. Although in that case, I would probably have a lawyer look over it. So you want to include, normally with a full title page, you'll have your book's title, the author, the illustrator, and then copyright information is usually on page 2. You can, in a book like this, a kid's book, have like a dedication page or something, or your name here, or however you want to handle that. And so typically, at least with a kid's book, either the first 2 or the first 4 pages are for that kind of stuff. If you're going for a longer book, like a chapter book, then in that case, you would have your title page, your copyright page. You may do like dedication or acknowledgments or whatever, and then a half title page, which is just normally the title of the book. So half title page is essentially identical to the title page, except without the author and illustrator info. And then usually on the back of the half title page, it's blank. And then you can start off with chapter 1. Or if you've produced an introduction, you would start with that. And so for illustrated books, you want to make sure that you create an effective and coherent page layout that balances the text and the illustrations based on your page count. That really goes back to what we were talking about with the storyboarding. And by the way, the course that I taught on write and illustrate children's books using AI, which was mid last year, that one goes into a lot more detail with some of this. You know, I didn't see the benefit of me reteaching the exact same thing over and over again, because that doesn't really change too much. And then, of course, font choices and sizing. You want to choose the best fonts and sizes for your book's text to ensure readability and accessibility. And some of that comes down to your age group. A simple Google search, what's an appropriate font size for 5 to 8-year-olds? And it will tell you, I mean, that's what I do. I have font rulers and stuff, but, and I've been at this game a little bit longer than I think all of you. So, but I still Google it, just like the rest of us. It's just faster and easier. And then outputting your final files, you can prepare and output your final files for printing or digital publication. I have no idea what typically as it should say typically as print resolution PDFs. I don't have no idea why MA is in there. Maybe I'm channeling my mother, although she's still living, so I don't know. But anyway, so let me give you before we wrap this up, what time is it? Oh, we're almost at 8:00. Okay. Good deal. So I'll show you part of my routine here, and then, you can just use that as a guide. Let me find. I'm just going to use this one. Okay. So let's say that I'm going with a horizontal layout book and that this is the perfect aspect ratio. So let's say that I'm doing 10 by 8. All right. So a 10 by 8 book, what that means is that I need my image to be 10 inches wide plus trim. So normally an 1/8 inch the whole way around. So 10 1/4 by 8 1/4 at 300 dots per inch if I'm going to print this. And so what that means is if I come up here to image size and switch over to inches and then change, I need to be 10 1/4. So I'm going to change 10 1/4 and actually we'll turn off resampling. So 10.25 gives me 7.72 at 120 pixels per inch. That's not enough. If I want to do a true 10 1/4 by 8 1/4, I would put in 825. That puts me at 10.9. So I'm going to have to trim it slightly, but still the resolution is not enough. I need it to basically be at least 3 times what it is now. Okay, so I'm going to hit OK. And then I will come up here to neural filters and choose super zoom. And they basically have 1x, 2x. They can do 3x. So I'm going to see if that puts us close enough. A lot of them don't offer 3. They just do 2 and 4. So now you can see, looks like I have a little beginning of a signature thing there. So I'm going to lasso around that and choose edit content aware fill. And that'll get rid of that. And then just flat my image. And so then the next thing that I'm going to do is check my image size. So right now I'm at 12 by 9. So I'm too big, but that's good. So what I'm going to do is set this to 8.25 and let the width fall where it mays, where it falls. And then I'm going to, you want to make sure you're set to inches here. You can just right mouse click on the ruler and change it. I need 10.25. And I'm just going to center it, I think. Okay, so now my image is at the right size. It's at the right aspect ratio and everything. And so now, like what I often do, and I've shared this before, but I'll share it again. Usually, I don't use the images as is, never. So I'll make a copy and turn off the copy. I like to use, as many of you know, some of the JixiePix products like Impresso or Pastello. In this case, I think we'll try Impresso, which basically gives you oil painting type options. And I have a few presets that I like. Now you'll notice that we're really losing a lot of detail, and that's fine. We're going to solve that problem in a minute. So you can experiment with these. I'm actually not really feeling this. So let's try Pastello. That's what I use most of the time, honestly. And so here, you can go through and try different styles. I have a lot of presets. that I use quite a bit. That's a bit punchy. I kind of like that. We'll just use that one, apply it. And so you'll notice that we've definitely lost detail. It's very painterly looking, but we lost a lot of detail. And so the good news is that I can take this copy layer here and just leave it set to normal, but turn the opacity down to like 40. And it actually adds detail back in. And we can even make it maybe a little higher. I usually don't go higher than 50. And so you'll notice if we zoom in, we still have the texturing of the pastel coloring with some of the detail brought back in again. So the lines aren't as harsh as just using the original image by itself. And then once, if we're satisfied with how that appears, then we can just flatten the image and save it. You'll notice that with super zoom, it actually creates a new document. And then what I normally do is, based on the storyboard or whatever, I will save the file based on what page number it's supposed to go to. Trust me, it's a sanity saver. So that way, if this is supposed to be page 5, name it page 5. If you're working on multiple books, name it the title of the book, page 5. Okay. Or if you want to take the pro route, you would name it the ISBN number and page 5. Okay. So it's up to you. But yeah, that's it. Does anyone have any questions other than what's already been asked? I'll just wait a few because there's about a 15-second delay, I figured, between me talking and you actually hearing. I don't know why. Technology, I'm sort of happy to only be teaching 2 hours tonight. I taught for 5 last night, so it's like I'm getting off the hook easy. No questions? Oh, helps if I scroll down. Oh, no, I already saw those. So if there are no questions, we are going to wrap this up. Kelda says, no questions, but really great details on how to progress story with images like the character poses. Yeah, and you'll get, I'll tell you what I'll do. Hadn't really thought about this, but it actually makes sense. Is the various secondary prompts that I used for generating the stories in ChatGPT, I'll add an extra page to the presentation with those prompts on there so that you have them as a reference. And then, of course, I'll save that as a PDF and upload it into the members area. Val says, excellent class. Thank you. You're very welcome. And Suzanne said, like the model sheets. Yeah, I would really recommend that you take all the different things that I shared with you and try them. Even the same prompt some of the same prompts that I ran, try them exactly as is. And then once you've done that, then start to substitute new artist styles, new artist names, different characters, different settings, but use that original as a foundation that I shared and then expand and build and change from there. It's going to be a lot easier. And really, the more you can learn how these prompts work and the different sections in the prompts, both for art and for writing, the better off you're going to be in the long run. Just really set some time to figure out how they work and what controls them and what doesn't control them, because there are people that use words that really don't matter. And so I try to keep my prompts lean and mean, but in some cases, as you saw tonight, they can still be pretty long, depending on what you're after. Liz says, thank you very much. Great class. Stevie says, thank you. Off to create my children's book. Awesome. And Susan says, thanks. You're very welcome. And one thing, I've shared this before, and I know Kelda has taken advantage of this, but as you create books and products, and you get them available, like on Amazon or wherever, or Kindle or wherever you choose to sell them, feel free to post links to those in the Facebook group, the Expert Media Webinars Facebook group. I love to see that stuff. I love to see what y'all are up to. I get sometimes you want to be a little secretive because you don't want other people to steal your stuff. I mean, I get that. I've been at this a long time, and people still steal my stuff sometimes. So I'd rather just, share it and be open about it. But by the way, another thing too, a lot of the prompting that we talked about tonight, the strategy behind the art prompts are some of the same strategies that I use to generate the consistent illustrations that I used for my Oracle deck. That's where some of that research came from, was whenever I was creating those card illustrations. So you can definitely apply some of that same idea and thinking to generating, I did 54 cards. So you could do that. And I'm getting ready to start working on the next deck that ultimately I'm going to run through Kickstarter, but I haven't officially started yet, other than a potential direction for an art style. But I'm not sure yet. So anyway, you can definitely apply what we shared tonight in a lot of different ways. All right. Mary says, quite interesting material. Thank you. You're very welcome. All right, folks. So we are going to call it an evening. So thank you very much for joining me here. Next module, we're doing the final 2 modules next week, and I think I have it set up for either the same day on Thursday or Thursday and Friday. I'm not quite sure yet. Quite frankly, Shar, for the writing prompts, what I shared tonight is about all you're going to need. There's variations that you can create. I'm a big fan of experimenting. I will say that there are no easy buttons, regardless of what any other internet marketer says. They're full of shit. There is no easy button when it comes to AI or anything else. There's an easier button, but it's not easy. Rather than you be dependent on just doing solely what other people tell you to do, that's why I like to construct things in a way that make you think through the process a little bit. So with the prompts that I shared and that I'll include in the PDF, you really are equipped with everything you need, especially as a starting point. And feel free to experiment. I mean, that's really what is going to ultimately give you the confidence to write, is the experimenting with the prompts and seeing how they work, figuring it out. Yeah, because honestly, I mean, I can share other prompts. They could be worthless to you because I don't know what kind of story you want to write. I don't know your characters or anything like that. You do. So, yeah, it just makes sense to tweak and run. So that's it, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening and weekend, and we will reconvene next week.